Hey everyone, and welcome to this S2.5 channel. I know it's been a long time, and I hope you all have been doing super great. So last week, Avatar: The Last Airbender came out, and from general consensus, some people liked it and some didn't really fancy the creative liberties taken with the characters, the pacing of the story, the expositions, the dialogue, and etc. But personally, I think I'm a bit in the middle with this adaptation. On one hand, there were so many incoherent stories that they muddled up together and it didn't make much sense. And on the other hand, the creative liberties taken with some of the characters I did like. Characters like Azula, Zuko, Bumi. I did enjoy the perspective they took these characters to which we'll talk about later on. Truthfully speaking, I don't think anyone expected an Oscar performance from the cast members. They did as well as they could do representing these characters, and you kind of see it with the passion of Dallas James when it came to Zuko. I felt he represented the character to the utmost peak, maybe even to an aggrandized version of it. I mean, Zuko was pretty annoying throughout this series, and that is standard book one Zuko. Also, Paul Lee was an excellent Iroh. Elizabeth Yu was a unique version of Azula, but when it came to our fabulous three, I felt that the approach the screenwriters went with these three characters really limited them and the dynamic they shared. Because the stories diverted so much, you had episodes and scenarios in the cartoon where they grew together and got to know each other, like the Southern Water Tribe and the Southern Air Temple arcs. In my opinion, that really brings these three characters together. This adaptation really skimmed through that part, which is kind of a bit annoying but also expected. It's really diminished that sense of togetherness and family that we feel when watching these three characters. Okay, before we go on, please do consider subscribing and liking the video if you're enjoying the video. Thank you for your support, and let's get back into it. Now, please don't get me wrong, there were bad things and there were also good things. I think no one expected a verbatim retelling of Avatar: The Last Airbender. We expected it to be unique and to stand alone, and they really delivered when it came to that. The middle part of the series was almost unrecognizable from the animation, mainly when it came to the characterization and emotional turmoil of certain characters. The way Bumi was portrayed in this series, first it kind of took me aback, but looking back at it, I kind of understand why they did this, because removing Bumi's main characterization and deciding to portray him from a more realistic perspective, it's a bit of a drastic change. You had the most nonchalant character in ATLA become an annoying, hate-filled grandpa. This is a more matured Bumi. This is a Bumi who had gone through a world without Aang, and this was a really cool and unique way to see Bumi. Now, even when it came to Aang, they focused a lot on his struggles of taking a life, which we did see in season 3 of the animation, but they made this the main focus of Aang's arc, where we had Aang overcome that feeling of taking a life while still understanding what it means to be the Avatar. And finally, Azula and Zuko. The dynamic between Azula and Zuko, at first being two people with different goals, then being allied, then becoming these mature versions of themselves to finally face themselves, was a brilliant anti-hero villain dynamic. But this series almost remakes these themes. Now, firstly, Zuko in book 1 was really a 1D character or a flat character. This doesn't change throughout season 1. Yes, we do know that good does exist in Zuko, but this is not at the forefront of Zuko's arc. But in this adaptation, you had screenwriters almost create this good perspective of Zuko. Not necessarily changing the trajectory of the character, but what they do is they let you see Zuko's good side and use a good portion of screen time to really make that a focus, almost trying to let the audience understand this complicated anti-hero. And they do this not really by adding new dialogue or new motivations, but they shed light on things that the animations had tackled or had touched on, like with the 41st Division. In the cartoon, we only get to see Zuko stand up against Ozai's plans, to lay waste to a certain division of Fire Nation soldiers. But here, Zuko's relationship with the 41st Division was really focused on, the division that Zuko tried to save wave which cost him his face is now the division that he sailed with for the past 3 years. This really puts life into just some passing statements that Zuko made in the cartoon. And you also had this scene which was the Blue Spirit episode. It's not really an episode, I think it's a mini arc. I don't know what to call this, but basically the interaction between Zuko and Aang. This was a polar opposite of who Zuko truly is when compared to the animation. You had Aang trying to have a real conversation with Zuko. Normal season 1 Zuko just acted out like himself, but in this, the screenwriters took a different approach. They just basically build on things that were there in season 1. Yes, Zuko did act out, but in this scene, Zuko lets his guard down while having this conversation with Aang, showing that this character is so much more than meets the eye, and that the character has two sides that are both fighting against each other. Now, Azula. I know I've said this, but I really loved what they did with Azula. In season 2 and 3 of ATLA, she's a finished product. She's not like Aang or Katara, who's getting to know themselves or doubting themselves or, being tragically hurt by their past. She's a finished, polished product. One who doesn't think like a normal teenager. So implementing her into a season that had almost all the characters that were there really growing and facing obstacles to become their finished selves was really odd to me, but they found a way to make it work. Not just for Azula as a character, but also for Zuko too, making an already strong dynamic between these two characters even better and creating the perfect stepping stone into season 2. Now, in a way, they kind of made a mini Azula backstory, if that makes any sense. In each episode, we get to see Azula. You could see Ozai creating this narrative where he sees Zuko as the better child, always trying to make Azula feel like she's not good enough. After all, Zuko's the one fighting the Avatar, and she's here in the palace doing absolutely nothing. This was perfect because it created this version of Azula, which kind of felt to me that she needed to show Ozai she was in every way better than her brother. But with a hint of self-doubt, it almost creates a new version of the character. Now, if you remember this scene right here, I think this represented the finished product we get to see in the animation. I think they created a perfect backstory for Azula to really enter into this fight with both Aang and also Zuko. In this particular scene, you could see her shed off that self-doubt that she had with Ozai, and she becomes the true Azula that we get to see in the animation. And the coolest part is they found a way to include Azula into General Zao's plan, being that she aided General Zhao in his raid to take down the Avatar, and also the war that took place in the Northern Water Tribe. What this does is that it just creates more reason for Zuko to even hate Azula more. This is what I meant by this being the perfect stepping stone for these two characters in season 2, if season 2 ever comes out. All in all, this series was pretty cool. Yes, there were deficiencies, but I really enjoyed it, and let's not forget the series was visually stunning. The VFX team did an excellent job. From Ko, Appa, Momo, every single spirit looked really awesome. To be honest, the cast and Netflix should be pretty happy with this adaptation. Hey y'all, it's been a minute. I've been caught up with school and work. That's why I couldn't release a video, but hopefully I'll try my best to be releasing as much as I can. So I hope everyone's having a great week. Thanks for watching. God loves you and I love you too. Bye bye.